Once there was a young man named Rohan, born into a humble family in a small town where opportunities seemed few and far between. His parents worked tirelessly to make ends meet, but despite their best efforts, there was never enough. The house was small, the meals were simple, and every day felt like a struggle to stay afloat. From a very young age, Rohan was taught to value hard work, but there was one thing that his family couldn't provide him: the tools to dream big. He went to a local school where the education was basic, and the lessons felt repetitive. Most of the other kids in his class would daydream about growing up to become doctors, engineers, or teachers, safe, respectable professions. But Rohan, for reasons he couldn't explain, didn't feel like any of those options were meant for him. He saw himself living in a small house just like his parents, working a regular job, and following in their footsteps. He felt stuck before he even had a chance to start. But one day, as he sat under the old banyan tree near his house, thinking about the future, something inside him shifted. He remembered hearing a story about a man who went from being poor to becoming a successful entrepreneur. It was a story of struggle, failure, and resilience, but it was also a story of dreams turning into reality. That was the moment when Rohan realized that he didn't have to settle for a life of mediocrity. He could do something big. He could build his own future. The problem was that he didn't have the resources, knowledge, or connections to get started. But he was determined. He borrowed books from the local library, and every night after school, he would read about business, entrepreneurship, and success stories of people who had once been in his shoes. His nights were spent studying ideas, strategies, and ways to think differently. During the day, he worked at odd jobs, washing dishes, delivering groceries, and doing anything that paid a little. The money was never enough, but the knowledge he gained during those nights fueled his desire. But then came a setback that would have crushed anyone else. One day, while working at a local shop, Rohan overheard a conversation that shattered his confidence. Two men were discussing a business venture they had started, and one of them said, "The best way to make money is to start with something you already know. Don't bother trying to reinvent the wheel." Rohan, who was trying to come up with an innovative idea, realized that he didn't have any special skills, and the thought of coming up with something revolutionary seemed impossible. The weight of his lack of experience was too heavy to bear, and for a few weeks, he doubted himself. But he couldn't give up. If he wanted a different life, he would have to think differently. He had to find a way to start where he was, with what he had. One night, as he sat on his rooftop gazing at the stars, something clicked. He realized that he had been looking at success all wrong. It wasn't about inventing something new or finding a groundbreaking idea. It was about identifying problems and offering simple solutions. The businesses that were thriving were built on solving problems people faced every day. The key was to find something that needed fixing and put his energy into solving it. With that newfound clarity, Rohan set out to start a small business. He didn't have much to invest, but he knew that if he wanted to succeed, he needed to start small and grow slowly. So, he decided to sell products that people in his town needed but couldn't always easily find, things like cleaning supplies, kitchen tools, and basic home essentials. In the beginning, it was tough. Rohan would walk miles to buy items from the nearest wholesale market, then sell them door to door in his neighborhood. He had no branding, no marketing skills, and no large-scale operations. But he did have one thing that no one could take from him: persistence. Every day, he would approach potential customers with a friendly smile and a promise that he had something useful to offer. At first, it was slow. Many people didn't take him seriously. They saw a young boy, just starting out, with no experience in business. But Rohan didn't mind the rejection. Each no motivated him to try harder. He learned to listen to his customers, to understand their needs, and to keep offering them value. Slowly, people began to take notice. They appreciated his honesty, his willingness to go the extra mile, and his determination to provide the best service he could. It took several months, but eventually, Rohan's small business began to gain traction. His customers started recommending him to others, and word of mouth became his most powerful tool. He was no longer just a boy trying to sell random products, he was a trusted supplier in his community. His small business grew into a full-fledged operation with a steady stream of income. But just when things were starting to look up, Rohan faced a new challenge. A larger company came to town and began selling the same products at much lower prices. At first, Rohan was devastated. He didn't have the resources to compete with their prices, and he feared that his business would collapse under the pressure. However, instead of giving up, he realized that this was his opportunity to learn and adapt. Rohan didn't try to compete on price. Instead, he focused on what made his business different: the personal touch, the relationships he had built with his customers, and the trust they had in him. He started offering customized packages for households, where customers could get exactly what they needed, delivered to their doorstep. He also began sourcing higher quality products that weren't available through the larger chain, giving his customers an exclusive option that they couldn't find anywhere else. Rohan's strategy worked. His customers valued the quality and the personalized service he provided, and they were willing to pay a little extra for it. Slowly, he began to carve out his own niche in the market. The larger company couldn't compete with his unique approach, and over time, they began to lose customers to Rohan's small but loyal business. Despite the challenges, Rohan's determination never wavered. His business continued to grow, and eventually, he expanded to other towns, offering his products to a wider audience. He invested in better marketing, hired a small team, and began to build his brand. His story of perseverance and grit started to get noticed, and people began to take him seriously as a young entrepreneur. Rohan's life had changed, but he knew that this was just the beginning. He had gone from a small-town boy with nothing but a dream to a thriving business owner. He understood that success wasn't about starting with a fortune, it was about starting where you were and doing whatever it took to make it happen. His journey was far from over, and the lessons he had learned along the way would guide him as he continued to build his empire. But one thing was certain: Rohan had proven that no matter where you come from, success was within reach if you were willing to work for it. As Rohan's business began to expand, so did his ambitions. With each passing day, his small venture seemed to be growing into something much bigger than he had ever imagined. Yet, as his success began to take shape, he found himself confronting new, unexpected challenges. What once seemed like a simple operation now required more time, more attention, and more expertise than he had ever anticipated. He had always been hands-on, managing every aspect of his business himself. But as his customer base grew and his inventory increased, the demands on his time became overwhelming. His days were filled with phone calls, deliveries, meetings with suppliers, and trying to keep up with the ever-expanding needs of his business. Soon, he was barely getting any sleep, and the stress of managing everything started to take a toll on his health. Rohan realized that in order to take his business to the next level, he needed to delegate. But this wasn't as simple as it seemed. He was used to being the one in charge, the one who knew every detail of his operations. The idea of handing over parts of his business to someone else made him uneasy. But as the pressure mounted, he realized that he couldn't do everything alone. The first person Rohan hired was a delivery manager, someone who could help him organize shipments and deliveries more efficiently. This allowed him to focus on managing his suppliers and ensuring that the quality of the products he sold remained top-notch. The decision was a turning point. With the extra help, Rohan was able to free up time to plan the next stage of his business growth. But hiring employees was not without its own challenges. In the beginning, Rohan didn't have the resources to pay top salaries or offer benefits. He had to hire people who shared his vision and were willing to work hard for a small paycheck in the beginning, with the promise of growth down the line. It was a risk, but it was a necessary one if he wanted his business to grow. As he expanded his team, Rohan started to focus on building a company culture that was centered on trust, commitment, and shared goals. He worked hard to create an environment where his employees felt valued and motivated, not just for the paycheck, but for the opportunity to be part of something bigger. Slowly, his team grew, and each new hire brought fresh ideas and new skills that helped push the business forward. With a growing team in place, Rohan was finally able to take a step back from the day-to-day operations and focus on the bigger picture. His attention turned to marketing, branding, and expanding his reach beyond his small town. He realized that in order to compete with larger companies, he needed to invest in building a brand that resonated with people. The brand needed to reflect the values of trust, quality, and customer-centric service that had made his business successful in the first place. Rohan hired a small marketing team to help him with his vision. Together, they created a logo, designed an online presence, and developed marketing strategies that would help them reach a wider audience. They focused on digital marketing, leveraging social media platforms, and creating engaging content that showcased the uniqueness of Rohan's products. The goal was not just to sell, but to build a community of loyal customers who felt connected to the brand. The marketing campaign was a gamble, but Rohan knew that in today's world, a strong online presence was essential for growth. Slowly but surely, his business began to gain traction beyond his local area. People from neighboring towns started to place orders, and the word spread about the quality of his products and the exceptional customer service he provided. But just as things were starting to look bright, Rohan faced yet another obstacle that would test his resolve. The local market had always been his safe zone. But with his business now expanding, Rohan was faced with the question of whether he should venture into new markets outside of his region. He knew that expanding beyond his town would require a much larger investment in logistics, advertising, and staffing. It was a risky move, and if it didn't work out, it could drain the resources he had worked so hard to build up. Rohan took some time to weigh the options. He knew that the only way to achieve long-term success was to scale his business and reach a larger audience. But he also knew that expanding too quickly could lead to failure if he didn't have the right infrastructure in place. After much deliberation, he decided to take the plunge. Rohan secured a loan to fund the expansion and began opening new locations in other towns. The risks were high, but Rohan's determination was even higher. His team worked tirelessly to ensure that every new location would reflect the same values and standards that had made his first store successful. Slowly, the expansion started to pay off. More and more customers began to recognize Rohan's brand, and the orders started to pour in. But success came with its own set of new problems. The logistical challenges of managing multiple locations became a constant source of stress. Inventory management, delivery schedules, and staffing issues all needed to be addressed. The business was no longer a small, family-run operation. It had grown into a complex, multifaceted company that required careful planning and management at every level. Despite the hurdles, Rohan remained committed to his vision. He continued to invest in new technologies to streamline operations, improved his supply chain processes, and sought advice from mentors who had been through the growing pains of scaling a business. He learned to embrace the challenges, understanding that each one was an opportunity for growth and improvement. By the time Rohan had expanded into several new regions, his business was thriving on a level he had never dreamed of. His brand was recognized, and he had built a loyal customer base that spanned multiple towns. The road had been long, filled with hardships, doubts, and failures, but each obstacle had been a lesson in resilience and persistence. Looking back, Rohan realized that the key to his success wasn't about having the best idea or the most money to start with. It was about having the courage to take risks, the willingness to learn from mistakes, and the determination to never give up. His journey had been full of challenges, but every one of them had shaped him into the entrepreneur he was today. And as his business continued to grow, Rohan knew that his story was far from over. It was just beginning. With his business now expanding into multiple regions, Rohan found himself facing a new set of challenges. As his company grew, so did the complexity of managing operations. He had gone from being a small-town entrepreneur to overseeing a business that operated across several cities. But while the business was thriving, Rohan soon discovered that success brought with it a significant burden, the pressure to maintain growth and stay ahead of the competition. Rohan was no longer just dealing with the logistical aspects of his business, he was now managing a team of managers, accountants, marketers, and customer service representatives. Each new hire added a layer of responsibility, and he quickly realized that as the leader, his job was no longer just about executing the vision, it was about empowering his team to carry that vision forward. The challenge was learning how to lead effectively and delegate tasks to the right people while still staying true to the principles that had made his business successful in the first place. But with growth came competition. The larger, more established players in the market had begun to take notice of Rohan's business. These companies had vast resources at their disposal, and they weren't afraid to use them. They could offer lower prices, faster shipping, and larger product selections. Rohan knew that if he didn't find a way to differentiate himself from the competition, his business would quickly lose the edge it had fought so hard to gain. Rohan's first reaction was to double down on his strengths: quality products, personalized service, and building relationships with customers. He started thinking of new ways to add value to his offerings. He created a loyalty program to reward repeat customers and offered exclusive deals to those who referred others to the business. He also worked on creating better customer experiences, whether it was through improved packaging or faster delivery times. Every small improvement mattered. Despite his efforts, the competition was fierce, and for the first time since starting his business, Rohan began to feel a sense of doubt creeping in. Was his approach enough? Could he really compete with companies that had so many advantages? These questions weighed heavily on him, and at times, he wondered whether he had reached the limit of what he could accomplish. But just when Rohan was beginning to feel overwhelmed, he had an epiphany. One day, while walking through a bustling marketplace, he noticed something that sparked a new idea. The large, chain stores were busy, yes, but they lacked something. They lacked a personal connection with their customers. People were rushing through the aisles, picking up items without much thought or care. The smaller, more specialized stores, on the other hand, had a certain charm. The owners greeted customers by name, they had stories to tell about their products, and people felt a sense of loyalty to them. That moment made Rohan realize that he had something those larger companies didn't: a personal touch. He understood his customers better than anyone else, and he could offer them a shopping experience that was tailored to their needs. While big corporations competed with price and speed, Rohan could compete with something much more powerful: emotional connection. He began to invest more in customer engagement, emphasizing personalized service and making sure that every customer felt valued. He started to build a community around his brand, engaging with customers on social media, sending them birthday greetings, and creating special promotions just for them. Slowly, Rohan's efforts began to pay off. His customers felt seen, heard, and appreciated, and this connection kept them coming back. But even as he found new ways to engage his customers, Rohan knew that he had to stay ahead of the curve when it came to innovation. The world of business was changing fast, and new technologies were emerging that could change the way products were sold, distributed, and marketed. Rohan realized that if he didn't embrace these changes, he risked being left behind. He made the decision to invest in technology that would streamline his operations even further. He implemented a state-of-the-art inventory management system, automated some of his marketing efforts, and began using data analytics to better understand his customers' behaviors. With this new technology, Rohan was able to offer more targeted promotions, optimize his supply chain, and ensure that his products were always in stock. The technology didn't just make his business more efficient, it allowed him to serve his customers better, faster, and with more precision. But as his company grew, Rohan's personal life began to suffer. He had always been a workaholic, but now, with so many responsibilities piling up, he found himself working late into the night, constantly answering emails and taking calls. His relationships with friends and family became strained as he struggled to balance the demands of running a growing business with the need for a personal life. One evening, after working late into the night, Rohan collapsed into his bed, exhausted. He realized that he had lost sight of the very things that had motivated him in the first place: his dreams, his relationships, and his health. It was at that moment that Rohan decided to make a change. He couldn't continue running his business at the expense of his well-being. He needed to find a balance between work and life. Rohan began to delegate even more responsibilities to his team. He hired a COO to manage day-to-day operations, freeing up more of his time to focus on strategic planning and growth. He also made it a point to set aside time for his family and friends, ensuring that he wasn't always working. Slowly, he began to regain control of his life, but it was a difficult transition. Letting go of some responsibilities wasn't easy, and he often found himself second-guessing whether he had made the right decisions. As he adjusted to his new way of life, Rohan reflected on his journey so far. He had come a long way from the small-town boy with nothing but a dream. He had built a successful business, overcome countless obstacles, and learned invaluable lessons along the way. But he also realized that success wasn't just about money or fame, it was about finding fulfillment, balance, and meaning in all areas of life. Now, more than ever, Rohan understood that the true measure of success wasn't how much money he made or how many stores he opened. It was about how he impacted the lives of those around him, how he made his customers feel, and how he was able to balance his passions with his personal life. The journey was far from over, but Rohan was more focused than ever. He had proven that success wasn't just about having the right idea, it was about the willingness to evolve, to learn, and to adapt. And with that mindset, he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Rohan's business had grown to a scale he had never imagined, but with this success came new responsibilities and a growing pressure to keep the momentum going. As he moved into new markets, expanding his reach even further, the weight of managing a large organization began to take its toll. Although his company had a team of skilled managers, the strategic decisions now required more foresight and planning than ever before. The industry was rapidly evolving, and technology was shifting at a pace that often left Rohan feeling overwhelmed. The digital landscape was changing, and customer expectations were higher than ever. People wanted fast, efficient service, personalized experiences, and access to products at the touch of a button. Companies that failed to innovate were left behind, and Rohan knew he had to stay ahead of the curve. One evening, after a long day of meetings and decisions, Rohan sat in his office staring at the glowing screen of his laptop. The business had become a complex web of operations, supply chains, marketing campaigns, and customer feedback, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to stay on top of it all. While the business was still profitable, Rohan knew that it couldn't remain stagnant. If he didn't adapt, he risked losing the very edge that had made him successful in the first place. The next morning, Rohan made a decision that would change the course of his business. He decided to invest heavily in digital transformation. He reached out to several tech experts and began researching cutting-edge tools that could improve the customer experience, streamline operations, and enhance his business's overall efficiency. But the challenge was greater than just upgrading systems, it was about reshaping the way the business operated. Rohan started with his online presence. He realized that his website, although functional, was outdated. He hired a team of web designers and developers to overhaul the site, ensuring that it was more user-friendly, faster, and visually appealing. They integrated AI-driven features that could recommend products based on a customer's browsing history, making the shopping experience more personalized and engaging. He also focused on optimizing the logistics of his business. He implemented a real-time inventory tracking system that allowed him to monitor stock levels across all his locations and suppliers in real time. This improvement meant that Rohan could prevent stockouts and ensure that popular products were always available. He also upgraded the delivery system, implementing advanced routing software that allowed his delivery teams to find the quickest, most efficient routes, reducing delivery times and costs. As Rohan continued to embrace digital tools, he started to see the impact on his business almost immediately. Customer satisfaction improved, and orders were processed more quickly and efficiently. His website's user experience was smoother, and he began seeing a significant increase in online traffic. His social media following grew, and he noticed more engagement from his customers. But despite these successes, Rohan felt the pressure mounting again. As his business expanded into even more cities and markets, he realized that his vision for the future needed to go beyond just selling products. The market was becoming more competitive, and he knew that differentiation would be crucial in maintaining a competitive edge. He couldn't afford to be complacent. Rohan's solution came in the form of a new business initiative that would combine his expertise in customer service with his new tech investments, the introduction of a subscription-based service. He called it the Rohan Select program, offering members exclusive access to high-quality, hand-picked products, personalized recommendations, and faster delivery options. The service was designed not only to increase customer loyalty but also to provide a steady revenue stream through recurring monthly payments. The idea was risky. Subscriptions were popular in some industries but not in his. The challenge was convincing his customers that the service was worth it. To make the program more attractive, Rohan decided to offer free trials, where customers could sign up and experience the benefits before committing. It was a bold move, but he believed that once people saw the value, they would stay on as long-term subscribers. At first, the program didn't take off as quickly as he had hoped. Many customers were hesitant to commit to a subscription, unsure of what they would actually get in return. But Rohan didn't back down. He tweaked the program based on feedback, improving the product selection, offering exclusive discounts, and building a stronger sense of community around the brand. Slowly, more and more people began to see the value of the program, and subscriptions started to increase steadily. Rohan's gamble began to pay off. The success of the subscription service boosted the company's revenue and helped differentiate his brand from the competition. By offering exclusive products and experiences that weren't available elsewhere, he created a new level of customer loyalty. People weren't just buying products anymore, they were becoming part of something bigger, a community of people who valued quality, exclusivity, and personalized service. As the subscription program gained traction, Rohan realized that his company had evolved into something far beyond what he had originally set out to build. It was no longer just about selling products. It was about creating an experience, building relationships, and offering something that couldn't be found anywhere else. He had successfully combined the power of technology with his personal touch, and in doing so, had created a brand that felt personal to every customer. But with success came even greater competition. Bigger companies with even larger budgets began to take notice of Rohan's business and its innovative approach. They started to mimic his strategies, offering similar services and trying to capture the same loyal customers he had spent years cultivating. It was a new kind of competition, one that wasn't just about price and product but about building emotional connections with consumers. Rohan knew that to stay ahead of the curve, he needed to continue evolving. He had to focus on expanding his product lines and offering new, exclusive services. He also needed to invest more in customer service training, ensuring that every interaction with his brand left customers feeling valued and appreciated. The fight for customer loyalty would never stop, and Rohan was determined to continue pushing his company forward, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Despite the mounting pressures, Rohan felt more confident than ever before. He had learned the value of embracing change and adapting to new trends, even when it seemed risky. The journey had been long and filled with obstacles, but each challenge had made him a stronger leader. Rohan knew that his story wasn't over yet, he had only scratched the surface of what his company could achieve. Looking out over the city from his office window, Rohan realized that the road ahead was still full of uncertainty. But for the first time in a long time, he felt ready. Ready to tackle whatever came next, to take risks, and to keep evolving. He had built something truly remarkable, but he knew that the key to long-term success was constant innovation. And with that mindset, Rohan was more prepared than ever to navigate the future of his business and lead it to even greater heights. As Rohan's business grew, so did the complexity of the challenges he faced. With each new milestone, it felt as if a new set of obstacles appeared, each one more daunting than the last. While his company's expansion had been a success, Rohan began to understand that simply managing day-to-day operations and maintaining customer loyalty wasn't enough to guarantee long-term success. The competition was fierce, and market conditions were shifting faster than he could keep up with. The world of e-commerce was rapidly changing. New players were entering the market every day, many of them armed with innovative technologies and fresh business models. These new competitors had access to vast amounts of venture capital, enabling them to scale quickly and dominate the market. Rohan had built his company from the ground up, relying on hard work and a customer-centric approach. But now, it seemed as if his growth would be tested not just by local competition but by global giants, too. Rohan had always prided himself on staying ahead of the curve. But as the business landscape became more saturated, he knew he had to push even harder to maintain his edge. To do so, he started attending conferences, networking with other entrepreneurs, and immersing himself in new ideas. It was at one such conference that he had a conversation that would change his perspective entirely. Rohan met a young, visionary entrepreneur named Meera, who had built a successful tech startup. She spoke about the importance of innovation and how businesses that didn't adapt to the changing digital world would fall behind. She introduced him to the concept of disruption, explaining that the companies that survived would be the ones that didn't just follow trends but created their own. Her words stayed with Rohan long after the conference ended. He realized that he couldn't just compete with the bigger companies by offering better customer service or faster delivery times. The industry was shifting towards something entirely new: the rise of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and automation. If Rohan didn't act now, he risked becoming obsolete in an increasingly digital world. Determined to stay ahead, Rohan made a bold decision. He would transform his business into a leader in the AI-driven e-commerce space. He dove headfirst into research, meeting with experts, and learning everything he could about how artificial intelligence could revolutionize the retail industry. He began integrating AI technologies into various aspects of his business. The first step was to implement a highly sophisticated recommendation engine on his website. Instead of relying on traditional methods of product categorization, Rohan's team worked with developers to create an algorithm that could suggest products based on an individual's browsing history, purchase behavior, and even their social media activity. This made the shopping experience even more personalized, boosting customer satisfaction and driving sales. Next, Rohan focused on automating as many processes as possible. He invested in AI-powered chatbots that could handle customer inquiries 24/7. These bots weren't just simple question-answer machines. They were powered by natural language processing, allowing them to engage customers in meaningful conversations, providing solutions and recommendations in real time. Customer satisfaction soared as people appreciated the quick and efficient service, and Rohan's team was freed up to focus on more complex tasks. But Rohan didn't stop there. He also introduced machine learning into the supply chain, helping to predict demand more accurately and ensuring that products were always in stock when customers wanted them. AI-driven forecasting tools allowed Rohan to track trends and anticipate consumer preferences before they even happened. This gave him a massive advantage over his competitors, who were still relying on outdated inventory management systems. As Rohan's business became more reliant on AI, he began to see incredible results. Sales increased, operational costs decreased, and customer engagement reached new heights. His company had transformed from a small, local business into a cutting-edge tech-driven enterprise. But with every innovation came new risks. Rohan realized that as technology advanced, so did the potential for cybersecurity threats. He knew that a breach in his system could not only result in financial losses but also destroy the trust he had spent years building with his customers. To combat this, he invested heavily in securing his data and systems, working with top cybersecurity experts to ensure that his company remained safe from cyber attacks. He also began educating his employees on the importance of security, making sure that every member of the team understood their role in keeping customer data safe. But just as things were looking up, Rohan found himself facing another unexpected challenge: regulatory scrutiny. As his company grew, the impact of its operations on the economy, environment, and society began to attract attention from government officials and regulatory bodies. Laws and policies were being enacted to curb the power of tech giants, and Rohan knew that his business would likely be subjected to similar regulations. It was a challenge Rohan hadn't anticipated, and it left him feeling unsure about how to navigate the rapidly changing landscape. His team of legal and compliance experts worked tirelessly to ensure that the business remained compliant with every law and regulation. But even with the best efforts, the uncertainty surrounding future regulations remained a constant source of stress. Rohan understood that being a leader in the tech-driven e-commerce space meant constantly adapting not just to technological advancements, but also to shifting legal landscapes. To stay ahead, he began developing strong relationships with lawmakers and industry leaders, ensuring that his voice was heard when new policies were being discussed. Rohan also made a point to stay informed about emerging regulations and built a proactive compliance strategy into the company's long-term vision. Despite these challenges, Rohan felt a renewed sense of determination. The world was changing, and he knew that his company had to evolve with it. The road ahead was uncertain, but Rohan was no stranger to overcoming adversity. He had built his business from nothing, and he knew that as long as he stayed adaptable and focused, he could continue to lead his company toward success. His commitment to innovation, technology, and customer experience was stronger than ever. He had taken a small-town business and turned it into a global leader in the e-commerce space. But Rohan understood that success wasn't just about the products he sold or the profits he made. It was about the people he served, the impact he had on the industry, and the legacy he would leave behind. Looking out over the city from his office window, Rohan realized that his journey had only just begun. The challenges he faced now were greater than ever, but with every obstacle came an opportunity to grow, to innovate, and to lead. Rohan had come a long way from the young entrepreneur struggling to make ends meet. But he knew that the future was full of endless possibilities, and he was ready to face whatever came next. Alex Carter had gone from a homeless man sleeping in his car to making $15,000 a month through his content agency. But he knew one thing: real wealth wasn't about working harder. It was about working smarter. If he wanted to go from thousands to millions, he had to think bigger. So he started studying business giants, how they built brands, scaled their operations, and created passive income. One thing stood out: they weren't just service providers. They owned assets. That's when Alex made his next move. He launched his own website, Carter Content Solutions. Instead of just working on freelancing platforms, he started attracting clients directly. This gave him full control over pricing, branding, and client relationships. And then he did something even riskier. He invested every penny he had, nearly $50,000, into building a high-quality team, marketing his services, and running paid ads. It was a gamble. If it failed, he'd lose everything. But it didn't fail. His website started attracting high-profile clients, tech startups, real estate firms, and e-commerce brands. Within months, his agency's revenue exploded to $50,000 per month. Then, another game-changing opportunity came. One of his clients, a well-known business coach, offered him a partnership. Instead of just writing content for businesses, Alex would teach entrepreneurs how to scale their own agencies. It was a turning point. Alex created an online course, the $0 to $1 million Agency Blueprint, where he shared his entire journey, how he started with nothing, built a business, and scaled it to 6 figures. The course launch was a massive success. In just 3 weeks, he made over $250,000. Alex Carter, the same man who once had just $11.50 in his pocket, was now on his way to becoming a millionaire. And the world was finally taking notice. Rohan's company had reached a level of success that many entrepreneurs only dreamed of, but the pressure to maintain that success had begun to feel overwhelming. The challenges of running a high-tech e-commerce business in a fiercely competitive landscape were growing more complex by the day. As Rohan's company expanded globally, he found himself managing teams and overseeing operations across multiple continents. It wasn't just about keeping up with the demands of the business anymore, it was about staying at the forefront of the industry and continuing to innovate, even as competitors were catching up. One of the most significant changes Rohan began to notice was the rapid pace at which consumer behavior was evolving. Customers no longer just wanted a product, they wanted an experience, one that was tailored to their individual needs and preferences. They wanted more than just fast shipping, they wanted to feel that the brands they supported understood them, their values, and their aspirations. Rohan realized that to maintain his company's position at the top, he would need to deepen his focus on customer experience. The challenge was clear: how could he continuously evolve and meet these new expectations while also staying true to the values that had made his business successful in the first place? Rohan decided that the answer was to make his company more agile, flexible, and responsive to the rapidly changing demands of the marketplace. He started by looking inward. Rohan had always been someone who valued customer relationships, but as the business had grown, those personal connections had become more difficult to maintain. His teams had expanded, and the business had become more corporate, with layers of management that sometimes made it harder to connect with customers on a personal level. To bring that personal touch back, Rohan implemented a series of changes that focused on customer centricity. He launched a company-wide initiative called Customer First, aimed at making every department, from logistics to marketing, more attuned to customer needs. He invested in advanced analytics tools that would allow him to track customer preferences in real time, helping him understand exactly what his customers wanted before they even asked for it. Rohan knew that to stay ahead, his business needed to be proactive, not reactive, in meeting customer expectations. At the same time, Rohan knew that technology alone wouldn't be enough. He began focusing on nurturing a culture of innovation within his company. He wanted to build a team of creative thinkers who were always looking for new ways to solve problems and meet challenges. To do so, he brought in top talent from diverse industries and made it clear that his company would encourage bold, unconventional ideas. The changes Rohan implemented were not without their challenges. His team was accustomed to the old way of doing things, and not everyone was immediately on board with the new direction. Some employees were resistant to the idea of change, fearing that the company's culture of hard work and perseverance would be compromised. Rohan knew that winning over his team would take time, but he also understood that innovation required discomfort. He reminded his employees that they were not just working for a company, they were part of a movement, a company that was leading the charge in reshaping how people thought about e-commerce. Rohan also began to focus on sustainability, an issue that had become increasingly important to consumers. He recognized that the future of business wasn't just about making profits, it was about making a positive impact on the world. In a move that shocked the industry, he announced that his company would become carbon neutral within 5 years. This commitment meant redesigning his supply chain, working with sustainable suppliers, and rethinking how his company handled packaging, waste, and energy consumption. While the changes required significant upfront investment, Rohan believed that this was the right decision for the future, both for the planet and for his business. The decision to prioritize sustainability was a bold one, and it wasn't without its challenges. Rohan faced resistance from some of his stakeholders, especially those who were concerned about the financial impact of such a large-scale shift. But Rohan was resolute. He believed that in the long run, consumers would reward companies that prioritized environmental responsibility, and he was determined to be ahead of the curve. While implementing these changes, Rohan continued to focus on growth. His company had already expanded into several international markets, but there were still regions where he believed his brand could thrive. He started looking at emerging markets, particularly in Asia and Africa, where he saw an opportunity to tap into rapidly growing middle-class populations. The challenge in these markets was different from the ones Rohan had faced in the past. These regions had different consumer preferences, cultural nuances, and logistical challenges. But Rohan was no stranger to overcoming adversity. He made it a point to partner with local businesses and understand the unique needs of each market. His strategy wasn't just about selling products, it was about becoming part of the community and adapting to the local culture. By working closely with local entrepreneurs, suppliers, and communities, Rohan was able to build a presence that felt authentic and connected to the people he was serving. Despite his best efforts, Rohan couldn't escape the realities of being a global leader in business. The larger his company grew, the more he found himself removed from the day-to-day operations of the business. As much as he loved the vision he had created, he began to miss the hands-on work of building something from the ground up. He missed the days when he could engage with customers directly and feel the pulse of the business in real time. It was a bittersweet realization, but Rohan knew that it was a natural part of growing a company. The entrepreneur he had once been was still there, but now, he had become a leader of a vast empire. He realized that leadership wasn't just about executing ideas, it was about inspiring others to execute them. So, Rohan did something unexpected. He decided to step back from the front lines of the business, allowing his team to take more control and push the company forward in new directions. He appointed a new CEO who shared his vision for innovation and sustainability, and he began focusing more on the strategic direction of the company rather than on its daily operations. It was a difficult decision, but Rohan understood that this was the next step in his journey. He had built the foundation, and now it was time for others to build upon it. With his new role, he was able to focus more on long-term vision, partnerships, and societal impact. He was no longer burdened with the day-to-day grind but instead had the space to reflect on the bigger picture and plan for the future of his company and his legacy. As Rohan looked back on the path he had traveled, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. From the humble beginnings of a small-town entrepreneur to a global business leader, his journey had been filled with unexpected twists and turns. But every challenge, every setback, and every victory had taught him something invaluable. He knew that the future would continue to present new challenges. The world was evolving rapidly, and his business would need to adapt if it was to thrive. But Rohan was more determined than ever. He had proven that with vision, innovation, and a relentless drive, anything was possible. Now, as he took a step back and allowed his team to lead the charge, Rohan understood that true success wasn't just about what he had built, it was about empowering others to carry his vision forward and continue the journey of growth, innovation, and impact. The road ahead was still long, but Rohan was ready for it, knowing that the foundation he had laid would continue to shape the future of his company for years to come. As Rohan transitioned into his new role as visionary leader, stepping away from the daily operations of his empire, he found himself reflecting more deeply on the nature of success. His journey had been extraordinary, from a small-town entrepreneur scraping by to a global force in the e-commerce industry. He had achieved financial success and industry recognition, but as time passed, he began to realize that the true value of his work wasn't just the wealth he had accumulated or the empire he had built. It was the impact his business had made on people's lives. Rohan had always believed that business was more than just profit, it was about creating value for customers, improving lives, and contributing to society. But now, as he moved into this more strategic role, he saw the opportunity to scale that impact even further. He began to think beyond the bottom line, considering how his company could leverage its success to tackle some of the world's most pressing issues, such as climate change, social inequality, and access to education. One of Rohan's earliest initiatives was to launch a global program that would use his company's resources to support education in underserved communities. He knew that the power of education could transform lives, and he was determined to use his success to give back in a meaningful way. Through partnerships with local governments and nonprofits, Rohan's company started funding schools in remote areas, providing scholarships to bright students from low-income families, and creating training programs to help people gain the skills they needed to thrive in the digital economy. Rohan's commitment to social impact didn't stop with education. He also turned his attention to environmental sustainability, making it the core of his company's long-term strategy. His goal was to make his company a leader not only in technology and business but in environmental stewardship. He expanded the company's carbon-neutral initiative, scaling it to include all global operations and working with suppliers to adopt sustainable practices. As part of this initiative, Rohan spearheaded the development of a new line of products that were made from recycled materials and designed to be fully recyclable. He also invested in green technologies, such as solar-powered warehouses and electric delivery vehicles, reducing the environmental footprint of his business. In doing so, he set a new standard for sustainability in the e-commerce industry, pushing other companies to follow suit. But despite these efforts, Rohan knew that real change required more than just corporate responsibility, it required collaboration on a global scale. He began engaging with world leaders, environmental activists, and other industry giants to develop strategies that could address the challenges of climate change and resource depletion. Rohan became a vocal advocate for global initiatives aimed at reducing carbon emissions and promoting sustainable business practices. However, not all of Rohan's initiatives were immediately embraced by his stakeholders. The environmental initiatives, in particular, faced resistance from some of his investors, who were focused on short-term returns and worried about the upfront costs of implementing these changes. Rohan had to convince them that the long-term benefits would far outweigh the costs, both in terms of customer loyalty and regulatory compliance as governments around the world were tightening environmental regulations. While convincing investors was difficult, Rohan knew that the future of business lay in sustainability. He didn't just want his company to be a market leader in terms of revenue, he wanted it to be a model for how businesses could drive positive change. Slowly, his efforts began to pay off as more and more customers showed an appreciation for the company's commitment to the environment. The company's green initiatives helped boost brand loyalty, attracting a new generation of conscious consumers who cared about the impact their purchases had on the world. Meanwhile, Rohan's philanthropic efforts were starting to bear fruit as well. The educational programs funded by his company were making a tangible difference in communities across the globe. Students who had previously lacked access to quality education were now able to pursue their dreams, and many were returning to their communities to create change of their own. These success stories were a reminder to Rohan that the real measure of his company's success wasn't just in dollars and cents, it was in the lives it touched. As the years passed, Rohan's company continued to grow, but so did his sense of responsibility. He no longer viewed business as a means to personal wealth but as a tool for solving some of the world's most complex problems. He realized that he had a unique platform, one that could bring about large-scale change, and he was determined to use it to make the world a better place. Rohan also took a step back from the daily grind of his business, allowing his new leadership team to guide the company. His focus had shifted from managing the business to shaping its future and ensuring that it remained true to its core values. He began spending more time mentoring young entrepreneurs, sharing his experiences and insights with the next generation of leaders. His story had become one of perseverance, innovation, and the power of using business as a force for good, and he was eager to pass on that knowledge to others who could follow in his footsteps. One of his favorite initiatives was a mentorship program that paired young entrepreneurs with seasoned business leaders. Rohan found immense satisfaction in helping these young minds navigate the complexities of business, just as he had once been guided by others. He believed that by fostering a culture of mentorship and collaboration, he could help create a new wave of entrepreneurs who would not only build successful businesses but would do so with a sense of responsibility toward their communities and the environment. Though Rohan's business empire had become one of the most influential in the world, he remained humble and grounded. He never forgot the early days when he had struggled to make ends meet, the late nights working on his vision, and the sacrifices he had made along the way. Those experiences had shaped him, and they continued to drive him forward in his mission to make a difference. Rohan's story became a symbol of the power of entrepreneurship, not just as a path to wealth, but as a pathway to creating lasting change. His journey was about more than just achieving financial success, it was about using his platform to make the world a better place for future generations. The company he had built, the lives he had touched, and the changes he had initiated were all a testament to the fact that true success isn't just measured by what you achieve, it's measured by the positive impact you leave behind. As Rohan looked out at the vast landscape of his empire, he knew that his work was far from over. There would always be new challenges to face, new opportunities to seize, and new ways to make a difference. But for the first time, he felt that he had truly found his purpose, not in the boardrooms or the profit margins, but in the people he served and the positive change he was helping to create in the world. And with that, Rohan's journey continued, not just as a businessman, but as a force for good, committed to leaving a legacy of innovation, impact, and inspiration. As Rohan continued to lead his company through a period of profound transformation, he found himself reflecting on the most important lessons he had learned over the years. His journey had been anything but easy, and every success had been hard-earned. Yet, as he looked back, it was clear that each challenge he had faced, each setback, and each triumph had brought him to a place of understanding that success wasn't defined solely by financial wealth or recognition, it was defined by the value one brought to the world and the legacy one left behind. The change from a driven entrepreneur focused on growth to a philanthropic business leader was not instantaneous. It had taken years of self-discovery and reflection for Rohan to realize that his true purpose lay not in simply building a business empire, but in making an enduring impact on the lives of others. It had been his desire to change the world for the better that propelled him forward through all the toughest moments. But now, he knew that his company's greatest legacy would not be measured by stock prices or market share, it would be measured by the lives he had touched and the change he had sparked. Rohan spent his days focusing on ensuring that the company's social responsibility efforts were deeply integrated into its long-term strategy. He was no longer just thinking about how to stay ahead of competitors or increase profits, he was thinking about how the company could leverage its success to create social change on a global scale. His role had shifted from operational to strategic, and he poured his energy into forging partnerships with organizations and governments that could help amplify the company's efforts. Rohan's commitment to making a difference wasn't confined to his company alone. He also launched a foundation dedicated to addressing the pressing issues of inequality and climate change. The foundation's mission was to fund initiatives that supported marginalized communities, promoted access to education, and empowered women and minorities in business. The foundation also funded research into sustainable technologies and supported projects aimed at reducing the global carbon footprint. The foundation quickly became a force in global philanthropy, with Rohan personally involved in overseeing many of its initiatives. He traveled the world, meeting with leaders in education, environmental science, and social justice to ensure that the foundation's efforts were making a tangible impact. The foundation became a source of inspiration for others, with many businesses following suit and launching their own programs to contribute to society. Rohan's decision to move away from the day-to-day operations of his business had not only allowed him to focus on these broader initiatives but had also given him the space to consider the deeper purpose of his life. He was no longer caught up in the rush of daily meetings and decisions, and for the first time in a long while, he had time to reflect on the people who had helped him along the way. His family, friends, mentors, and team members were always by his side, and Rohan realized how fortunate he had been to have such a strong support system. These people had been with him from the start, and they had played a critical role in his success. One of the key relationships that had shaped Rohan's journey was with his mentor, Mr. Agarwal, the seasoned entrepreneur who had taken him under his wing all those years ago. Mr. Agarwal had taught him invaluable lessons about the importance of persistence, integrity, and vision. He had shown Rohan that success was not just about business acumen but also about building strong relationships and giving back to the community. As Rohan reached a point where he could look back on his accomplishments with pride, he knew that the foundation he had built was now in capable hands. His leadership team was fully equipped to carry the company into the future, and he had instilled in them the same values that had driven him from the beginning: innovation, responsibility, and a commitment to making the world a better place. But while Rohan was content with the direction his business and philanthropy were headed, there was one more area he had yet to fully embrace: his personal life. He had spent so many years building his company and pursuing his professional goals that he had neglected to spend time cultivating relationships outside of work. Now, with more time on his hands, Rohan began reconnecting with his family and friends, rediscovering the joys of simple moments. He spent more time with his wife, Priya, and their children, who had grown up with the legacy of his hard work but had never fully experienced the father and husband he wanted to be. With a renewed focus on his personal life, Rohan made an effort to be present for important moments, whether it was attending his son's school play or going on family vacations. These small moments, Rohan realized, were just as valuable as any business success he had achieved. Rohan also found a deep sense of fulfillment in mentoring young entrepreneurs, sharing the lessons he had learned throughout his journey. He started speaking at universities and startup incubators, offering advice and guidance to the next generation of innovators. His story had inspired many, and he found great joy in helping others realize their potential, just as others had helped him. As Rohan stood at the helm of his foundation, watching the impact it was having around the world, he couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude. He had come so far from the young man with little more than a dream and a determination to succeed. Now, he had the ability to make a difference on a global scale, and his work was inspiring others to do the same. His company, too, continued to thrive. But it was no longer just a business to Rohan, it was a platform for creating a better world. The employees, customers, and partners who were part of his company's ecosystem shared his values and worked together toward common goals. They were all part of something much bigger than the bottom line. They were part of a movement to use business as a force for good. Rohan knew that his journey was far from over. There would always be more challenges to face, more people to help, and more opportunities to create change. But for the first time in his life, Rohan felt at peace. He had built something that would endure long after he was gone, a legacy of innovation, generosity, and impact. As he looked out at the horizon, Rohan smiled. He had started with nothing but an idea and a dream, and now he had created something that would continue to make a difference for generations to come. The world was a better place because of his journey, and Rohan knew that his story was just one of many that could inspire others to take bold steps toward their own futures. And so, Rohan's journey continued, not as the man who once started from nothing, but as the man who had used his success to create something much larger than himself. His story was one of vision, perseverance, and a relentless commitment to making the world a better place, one step at a time.